Thank you all, and welcome to today's Member Forum meeting. Just some safety information first. I'd like to draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure. Please exit the building from the nearest exit and congregate by the cathedral. Right, full details of the questions submitted to Member Forum and the Mayor's written replies have been published on the Council's website. Groups have submitted their questions in priority order and are presented rotating around the party groups. Each councillor has asked a maximum of 2 questions about one topic or 2 separate questions about 2 different topics. Councillors have a maximum of 2 supplementary questions. If a councillor asks 1 question, they have 1 supplementary, and if they ask 2 questions, they can ask 1 supplementary per question asked. So, without further ado, we'll go straight on to green question 1. Councillor Fodor.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor. I was concerned about the replies from the Mayor. I think he's kind of either missed the point or is confused about some of the issues. My question was about access, not about road safety. It was about collaboration, not about centralisation. And he offered to communicate, but he hasn't said when and how he's going to communicate on the issues that are holding up routine recycling services in streets where there are regular parking obstructions. In terms of the second question, he just simply hasn't
Thank you. Councillor Fodor, if I could just ask you to ask your supplementary questions, please.
Yeah, well, I would have preferred an answer to my second question, because what I'm having to do is saying here, in terms of supplementary, he seems to have missed the point and failed to answer the point. I'm seeking joined-up council services to deliver basic routine recycling.
Yeah, if you could just ask you a supplementary question. I understand that you don't think the response is satisfactory, but if you could just ask your supplementary questions and then we can move on. So
will the Mayor support joined-up council action to make sure our routine services to our residents can get delivered if highways, legal, waste client, waste contractor and the communities can work together, then we could have services that work every week in the narrow streets where there's no management of parking.
Yeah, I mean, it might be one of the reasons that sometimes, with the greatest respect, your questions are difficult to answer because we don't quite know what they are. If I can just suggest that one of the things that would be helpful if rather than a page of preamble, we just had a shorter preamble and then the question, it would just really help myself and the officers as we try to navigate our way through the information. If the question is, do we support joined up working, then the answer is simply yes.
Councillor Fodor, do you have a second supplementary?
Yeah, I'm glad the Mayor supports that. I think the issue is that it's the council that's in the way of routine services operating effectively, and I don't think that's satisfactory. It's 2 years in this chamber since I said we need better information, and he agreed, and he said there could be corner protection. Will we get corners protected so our trucks and emergency vehicles can get round? Is that
your second supplementary question?
Will you support action on that so we get routine recycling services in the streets on the days when they're meant to happen?
Again, just trying to work out your question. Will I support people working with council officers, working with communities to make sure our streets are as accessible as possible, bearing in mind that this is a very crowded city with a population that's growing at a rate of knots? Yes, I will.
Thank you. Labour question 1. Councillor Ali, Barton House and Lawrence Hill Station.
Hi. First question is, could the Mayor provide an update on Barton House?
Thanks very much, Councillor Amal. First off, just to say thank you for the leadership and the support you've shown to the community and to the city in what's been an incredibly challenging time for the residents in particular, but also all the workers and the services and the community leaders that have rallied around to support people. So we will be providing a fuller update on Barton House on Wednesday, but we want to make sure, as you'll know from last time as well, that the residents get that information first. So we are being incredibly careful. Last time, we remember that, unfortunately, when we were briefing people who possibly should have known better at the same time, that was being relayed to the press, and that led to unnecessary confusion and concerns. So we want to make sure that the residents are respected and they get the briefings first. But we have had some updates. You'll be aware we had the session before Christmas in the conference hall where we said we'd come back in the new year with a fuller update. At that session in the conference hall, we just went again over how we've got to the situation we are in, an engineer's report that suggested to us the building was not safe, a fire service that confirmed that decanting of the building was an appropriate level of intervention. And so having to, I think to avoid any kind of Grenfell level rolling of the dice with the lives of residents, that's what we did. Then our job was to make sure that for those people whose lives were interrupted and inconvenienced by being moved from their homes, that we were providing the wraparound support that they would need. Free travel, making sure that they have hotel rooms, food provision, and obviously lower and higher level emotional, mental support in there as well. And obviously you've been an integral part of that. It is unfortunate that that a move on our behalf as a local authority that has been based on the prioritisation of the safety of our residents has been kicked around, not just in the city, but also in this chamber, unfortunately, as a bit of a political football, because this is all about the safety of the residents. But we'll just continue doing all we can to make sure that we serve them in the way that we should.
Thank you. There's a follow-up question I wanted to ask. I know the council has provided activities for children at Holiday Inn, but some residents were asking me if the council would work with partners to provide activities award from the holiday over the recent school breaks. Kai, are you aware of any external activities provided to residents during the holidays?
Yeah, thanks, Amal. And we have had a lot of support from external partners. So I know over the Christmas period, the sports clubs in the city provided free tickets to matches. We've also had a recent offer from Everyone Active. So they're providing free gym and leisure centre membership to the residents affected as well. So we've had a lot of support from partner organisations and individuals as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
My other question is, I will be campaigning to have the West of England Combined Authority. Their plans to make Lawrence Hill Station more accessible for parents with pushchairs and wheelchair users. Does the mayor support this campaign?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the great travesties of the city's transport offering, among many, at the lack of accessibility of some of the stations, in our city. I would add to that, this is one of the reasons we do need a chapter change in our transport offering for Bristol. Not only does it go back to the first Councillor Fodor's point about how we make transport provision for people in an increasingly crowded city, but by introducing a new transport offering, what it does do is it makes sure that it is at the top end of accessibility, both in terms of the physical access to the stations or the entry points, but also the routes it takes around the city as well, bringing parts of the city that have been left out of the city centre, and we're thinking about Hartcliffe and Noel West as well, into with the accessibility. But that does require a mass transit system. It requires a segregated mass transit system that serves some of the densest areas that cannot be delivered without elements of underground. The alternative to an underground is overground segregated, which means closing the main routes at Gloucester Road, St Luke's Malaga Road, Church Road in Bristol, which is why it will never get delivered. So that's the only hope the city has for a chapter change in the way we do transport around Bristol.
Thank you. Councillor Galandras.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Marvin, for your helpful and constructive answer, which I think recognises the scale of the problem at Bristol Waste at the moment. I will take up your offer to speak to Marley. I'll email Marley tomorrow. He's not listening to me, but there we go. I'll email you tomorrow, because it affects not just my ward, but lots of wards in North Bristol and maybe wards beyond North Bristol. And it is the recycling that seems to have gone wrong rather than the black bin collection. So we'll just see if we can put our heads together and see if there is a way of perhaps trying to get to the root of what the problems are. But thank you for your answer.
Can I just say, I talked to the exec director to raise your concerns directly with the exec director, so that offer of a gathering is there. So thank you. And I might as well just take the platform as well to say, can I say in the answer, if you haven't read the answer, councillors, if any of you have had issues with the collections, the offer is to meet with Bristol Waste, the councillors and Bristol Waste, to make sure they're fully aware of which wards are being impacted. And then the councillors have an opportunity as well to feed into Bristol Waste what we think the solutions, what the particular challenges and what we think the solutions would be. They're very open to that.
Thank you. Now, I'm not sure exactly, because I have a discrepancy in between what I've got on the ModGov and on my sheet. I'll go to Tim Kent with Lib Dem question 1 first.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, I agree with the Mayor that the Council does have reduced funding to look at, but we'll put aside the £140 million of Council taxpayers' money your administration's lost through poor financial control. The cost of opening our branch libraries is a very small amount. They're welcome spaces, they're really important. Could you agree to instruct officers this week to ensure next week our branch libraries are fully open through the use of additional staff and casual staff?
Yeah, I mean, I ignore the kind of usual snipe. I mean, what I will do is talk to officers to manage our services as best we can and resources we have available to us, which is an unavoidable constraint on our ability to be everything we wish we could be at this time. And it's not beyond anyone's awareness, I'm sure, that 1 in 5 local authorities are at risk of filing for 114 as well. So we're managing things as best we can while delivering for Bristol.
Tim, did you have a second question?
I do, thank you, Lord Mayor. Would the Mayor be willing to organise a small ceremony or thank you party for the litter pickers and community groups in our area? They save us literally tens of thousands of pounds through their work, and just a small thank you, I think, would go a long way.
Yeah, we've done a number of events thanking volunteers. When we started up Clean Streets under the leadership of Kurt James, who's an incredible community worker for us in the council, we had 3 prongs to that. One was about supporting communities to collect waste on the streets of their area and bag it with the support of waste. Secondly was to introduce fines, so we didn't just ask volunteers to thanklessly go out and pick up litter without us taking action on the people that were making our city dirty. And the second was to look at the whole waste system for Bristol. So as we bring new housing developments through, for example, or we look at our food chains, one of the questions that's raised very early doors is how do we build systems and city systems that reduce the amount of waste that we generate? And that goes for the construction sector as well. So it is in our daily life of consumer goods, but life in general. But as a part of that, there were real regular thank yous and touch points for those people who have gone out onto the streets, and picked up and bagged litter. So I will talk to Kurt about where we are in those thank yous. It's a no-brainer to, one is to thank those people who do go out to pick up our streets, but also to implore those people who do continue to drop litter and fly tip to stop. It costs the city lots of money. It costs us millions of pounds a year to clean it up. And all the efforts we've put into making Bristol tidy will always be undermined if people continue to treat this, if a small number of people, I should say, continue to treat the city with disrespect and the residents with disrespect by dropping their litter here.
Councillor Hopkins, the Clean Air Zone.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Clearly, as is acknowledged in the question, any changes or adjustments in the scheme, Clean Air Zone, will require government approval. Will it be the case that the Mayor brings forward this report in a way that allows for debate across this council so that positive ideas can be taken into account and put to government for any adjustments that may be possible?
Okay, I hope I've got the gist of what you said. The test is delivering compliance in the shortest possible time. And again, it's worth just remembering about the Clean Air Zone, because I know there's a lot of energy around it. It is a legal requirement to deliver compliant air as short as possible time. We warned national government it was a blunt instrument. Even within this chamber, while we were negotiating and pushing back on Therese Coffey about how blunt an instrument it was, and it could have negative consequences for some people, we were criticised. And people taking the opportunity to get themselves in a paper to criticise us for that. What we were doing was standing up for households, businesses within the city, and even the hospital who could be negatively impacted, making sure that we got a support package in place to make sure we have a just transition. But that legal requirement is the ultimate test. What I would say we do, Councillor Hopkins, is any changes to it have to be able to stand up against that test in a court of law, because that's where we'd be if we did anything to undermine the integrity of the scheme. But the Clean Air Zone, and it will be in your hands in this chamber, does not have to be a permanent intervention. It is there to change behaviours, and once behaviours and vehicles have changed, if we are moving around the city in a way that does not push our air over the limits of compliance, then technically, I suppose, it wouldn't be needed.
That's fine, because any scheme will change in the light of experience. We've now had a year's experience, so central government should surely listen. The second question, though, supplementary, is that last full member forum, I asked for data on swimming pool costs. They didn't come in the answer, and I used my supplementary to say, can I have written answers, please, to this question? And I was promised that they would arrive. They have not. Can I now get a second promise that all the data on the costs on swimming pools will now come?
The point is you didn't receive the data you were promised in your question. Okay, well, we'll chase up, but I would urge you as well, you don't have to wait for the next full council. If you just drop us a note in between times as well, and if you've not had a response from the officers, then you can let my office know and we'll chase them up for you as well.
Councillor Hathaway.
Thanks, and thank you for your detailed answer about streetlights. My first question was, is the issue that there are the lack of spare parts that's driving the delay, or is it poor service being delivered by the contractor themselves, or is it a mixture of the two?
Well, I've not had no feedback to say that we've had a particularly poor service. What I have had an indication is that it's not always easy to come hold of the parts. I'll check again, but that's what I understand at the moment.
Thanks. And you mentioned that there's this transition period that we're in at the moment. That's quite a helpful answer to be able to give to residents. Is there any way of getting that on to Fix My Street so that when people go on to check the jobs on there, they've got the answers there ready?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a couple of things we can do here. One is if we make a note of trying to get that on to Fix My Street, maybe what I could also do is ask for a note with this answer as well to be sent to all councillors so they're aware of where things are at right now with this and what the challenges of rolling it out, have been. Right? And the benefits of doing so as well. So I'll make a note and ask people to get that done.
Thank you. I see Councillor Breckles isn't with us, so Councillor Eddy.
Can I thank the Mayor for his replies, please? I've got two questions. Firstly, he mentions a deferred consultation in July to September. Where can I find the findings of this, please?
I will get them and get those sent to you as well. That's a few things I need to chase up now. So I'll get those sent to you direct, Councillor Eddy.
Thank you. Number 2, last March when Bristol Waste agreed the package of cuts and fee increases, Conservative councillors described them as mounting to a fly tippers charter. Can he tell us, have actually the savings produced the desired savings who wanted, or in fact has the increased cost purely been spent on actually picking up the fly tipping which has resulted?
Yeah, let me go and test those. And what they look like to us at the moment is a saving. What I would say is that it is a common conversation amongst local government at the moment, of all colours, that because we, manage our budgets on a yearly cycle, that some of the means we have at our disposal to make sure we bring our budgets in a balanced way come at the risk of increased costs over the medium to long term. That's in children's services, adult social care, housing support, and there clearly is going to be a risk here on waste. I mean, what you've put your finger on is a risk, right? And we don't deny that. But we do have that overwhelming need to bring home the balanced budget this year. And it's one of the reasons that I think not just as Labour, but as LGA as well. And when I was chairing the City Regions Board, we were talking about multi-year settlements for government so we could plan our finances over a much longer time period, thinking about how we spend to save as well as avoiding cuts at cost, you might say. But let me get some numbers back to you on the exact balance of that as we're understanding it.
Thank you. I know Councillor Davis is not with us, so as long as Councillor Plowden's ready, I know he's just walked in. Ed? It's your question.
I've only just arrived. I've been told that the first question is I've had residents concerned that people living in flats have a smaller waste capacity allowance than normal people, and we've asked questions about this but never really had a meaningful answer, and I was wondering if there's any explanation for why people get a smaller capacity allowance when they live in flats.
Just a minor point. I would say people who live in flats are also normal people, but the technical aspects of managing waste, it's in terms of making decisions about where the balancing is and where the routes are. I do defer to the expertise of the Bristol Waste Company on that front. If we are seeing, and if the evidence is suggesting that an adjustment in capacity has been implemented and that adjustment in capacity is inappropriate, then feed that back in. There will be in a period of adjustment where there's a rebalancing and a rerouting happening. It's the first time it's been done since 11-12. It will be based on evidence, it will be based on expertise, and that will be evidence and expertise that's designed to have a waste system that serves the city as it is, not as it was in 11-12. So please feed that back in, and I'm sure Bristol Waste will make the appropriate adjustments.
Thank you. I've just been informed that there's a possibility that we could maybe have a meeting with Bristol Waste to look at some persistent problems on, that's been offered to another colleague. We've got persistent problems on the New Walls estate just behind the 3 lamps. And a lot of it is privately owned. So when the residents are facing, when collections are missed, the managing agent then puts in a fee for clearing up the resulting mess. So would it be possible for us to get out with the relevant people onto the New Walls estate and do some problem solving, please?
Well, John Glandris, Councillor Glandris raised some points earlier on, and I said to Councillor Glandris that I spoke to the head of Bristol Waste yesterday, and I told him that concerns are being raised by councillors, and I asked him if he be prepared with his team to meet with councillors from across the city so he can hear firsthand what is happening. And then you can take collective action to work out what the solutions are. 2 things I would add to that, by the way. One is, on that front, just a second. I only use RE on that front, what I thought would be helpful is if, rather than just turning up to the meeting with your list, if every councillor with issues actually emailed my office, all right, but please, for the sake of administration, in the subject line, right, Bristol Waste, so that it makes it easy for them to collate all the case studies, and then obviously put your ward at the top of your email so they can collect them by ward. If we can get those really pronto, we can collate them, give them to Bristol Waste, so when you go in the meeting, you've got the information ahead of time. I would also ask you in those emails, as well as pointing out the issues, have an initial stab at what the solutions could be. But I also say, for the sake of this year's budget and next, the solutions cannot just be, we need another £1 million. We have to think of some really innovative ways of tackling littering and waste management in the city. So include those in your emails.
Thank you. I really appreciate that offer.
Thank you. Councillor Hornshan.
Thank you very much for your answer, Mayor. And I'm pleased that the fees and the increase of the heating costs will be reviewed in the business plans. However, as you can imagine, the residents have got hold of the liaison officers. I've gone through the members' inquiry plan and spoken to housing, but we've not had a lukewarm response at best. Is it possible that you could ensure us that they'd give us a more robust response in the next week or so on some of the issues?
Yeah, I can do that. If you can just, what would be helpful in my communication with them is if you could just, not being pinicky here, define what you mean by lukewarm as opposed to what you would mean by appropriate level of response, so we can be clear to them on where you feel as a councillor they've fallen short of offering the level of urgency that you and your residents would like them to receive. Then they can start acting on that pronto before they respond.
Yeah, it feels like they just don't listen to the residents, from what the stories I've been hearing from the residents.
So again, evidence of what is the evidence that, or what are the communications or the actions or the inactions that have left residents and yourself feeling like they haven't been heard. I think sometimes people respond to issues in different ways. They may not be effusive in their response, but what they might be doing is doing the hard yards, behind the scenes to get it done. So I don't want to make a judgment on the officers at the moment. Let's be clear, because actually it probably helped them in future communications with councillors to know how they can respond in a way that makes sure people feel they've been heard, and not feel they've been kind of ignored or not taken as seriously as they would have liked. And that's an important part of quality customer service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Harker.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Marvin, for your response. I don't have any supplementaries. I will just take this opportunity to congratulate you on your OBE in the New Year's Honours list.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wilcox isn't here, so we'll move on to Councillor Jackson.
Sorry, I've got no supplementaries to the first question, but looking at your answer, I can understand that the award was richly deserved by the Green Party. But question two, I've got one supplementary. I know our group is lobbying the Chancellor to reverse this cut in household fund. Do you think that all the other parties should do the same and we should do it collaboratively?
I think yes, in line with the kind of joined up working that we've tried to drive it, across the city. It would be good. It's good when the city speaks with one voice. This is an issue that I'll be raising with the One City office as well, because the consequences are not just for us as a local authority, but for the health service, for criminal justice, for further education, for schools as well. And so, if we can get a joined up city response, city voice on that, I think it will make our case all the stronger. It's also worth sharing as well that it won't just be Bristol, it will be other cities and local authorities around the country raising their concerns.
And also, I'd like to congratulate you on your richly deserved award from the King.
Okay, now, Councillor Glandris, your second question.
Thank you. And thank you, Marvin, for the answer, which again is very helpful. I won't ask it as a supplementary because it'd be slightly unfair, but I'll just make a point that the Avon Wildlife Trust own quite a stretch of land along the A4, and I think they're quite interested in noise pollution and reducing noise pollution, so might be willing to work with us to help us in some way.
Yes. I think of another forum as well, Councillor Gladys, actually, because they are involved with our Environment Board and our... so we'll do, we'll look in-house, obviously, at council officers, but actually we had a city office meeting yesterday and Councillor Dyer was there as well, who now sits on it as chair of scrutiny. So you can check in with Tony as well, and we're just talking about the need for those thematic boards under the city office to take on these kind of challenges as well and help come up with innovative solutions. Avon Wildlife Trust sits on the Environment Board, so they can encourage them to make their voice known there as well. But we welcome the challenge on it. We know it makes sense.
Councillor Rippington.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, thank you for the comprehensive response to my first question. Marvin and the team. I really want to thank Councillor Renhard for the work that he particularly has put in to make that happen with St Anne's House. It's a really brilliant initiative. If we can bring some housing along with that as well, that would be fantastic. I haven't really got a supplementary to that one, but I would say that I'm sure they'd love to see you or Councillor Ellie King down there and show you around and show you what they're doing down there, because it's a brilliant site that's going on there now. On my second question, which is transport related, if we don't get a mass transit system in this city, what do you see the future infrastructure of our transport looking like, and what will the consequences be, do you think?
I mean, I don't think it bears thinking about if we do not deliver a mass transit system for the city. By the definition, a mass transit system moves masses of people around a place. Our population is growing. Our borders are restrictive on us. We are having to focus more homes, well, we should as well, so we don't want to sprawl and we don't want to consume green space within the city. So we have to have people living more densely on brownfield sites. We don't want the city jammed up with cars. Ideally, we'd be a city in which people didn't have to have a car because they had a viable public transport offering. And again, as I go back to the point earlier on, it's one that has to be deliverable. I think it has been a disappointing journey, because I think the starting point for any leadership in Bristol is what's the best, right? What is the best? We're not worthy of the best, or the best is pipe dreams and all that, because that's not what great places and great developments have been made of. What is the best? And then you pursue the best until the evidence tells you the best is not available. At the moment, the whole process we've gone through, at no point has it said no. The process has said yes. In terms of the technical deliverability of a mass transit with underground in the densest areas, and in terms of the financial viability of that. And bearing in mind that the National Infrastructure Commission, only a few months, just before my State of the City, identified 4 cities for mass transit: Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham and Bristol. So outside of Bristol, there are national bodies who have influence over billions of pounds of investment, who are picking us out as the places that need mass transit and are worthy of having billions of pounds spent on it. What's been challenging and disappointing is that within the city and within the city region, I would add to, unfortunately, that level of ambition for Bristol has not been matched. And my concern is, again, once this administration is over, if this chamber doesn't pick up the mantle of wanting the best and fighting for the best for Bristol, they will go down a route of pursuing a scheme that is undeliverable, because I cannot see a future in which this chamber signs off interventions that close those main roads and require the compulsory purchase of land and buildings along those roads to make two-directional mass transit fit. You can't fit it up and down Gloucester Road unless you CPO buildings up and down the side of the road, make it 20 odd metres wide. So in that sense, if it isn't done, it will never get done, and we'll be on the patch and mend approach we've always had. The rail network won't suffice, the bus network won't suffice, cycling and walking won't suffice for a city, with the geographical area that we have. And I just don't think that future is one that's worth. It's a frightening future for us.
Councillor Weston, your question on libraries. Do you have supplementaries?
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I do indeed. Supplementary to question 1, and appreciate the response. I think many of us are used to libraries closing at lunchtime. That's sort of a default setting, it seems to be. But over the last month, there have been an awful lot of part days, full days, and multi-day closures. I remember an irate email from Councillor Jackson who's just left the room. And I'm just wondering if you could tell me what the current driver behind these recent spates of part or full day, multi-day closures has been. Is it that we've got increased sickness? Is it that we've not managed holiday requests properly? Or are we carrying a lot of vacancies in the team? What's the main driver?
Yeah, well, as I think I put in my first, we are identifying quite a lot of stress and sickness on staff coming through. I mean, bearing in mind as well that our own workforce is not immune to the challenges of the wider society, and we have seen increasing levels of need across our population, hence one of the drivers of increasing our social care costs, and our workers are part of that wider population, and we have had vacancies. I know Ellie's sitting there, so I don't want to step on your toes, Ellie, in terms of managing, but I guess the managers have been managing limited resource in the face of constant need. But that an increase in stress on that resource. Ellie, I don't want to step on your toes in that. Did you want to input at all to this item?
Yeah. So a lot of it has been sickness related, and obviously they're not immune to the wider pressures that are in the council as well. But also I think it is important to put it in context. A lot of these closures are actually only part days, lunchtime hours and things like that. So of a possible 100% of full opening hours, there's only 6.3% has been closure. So where you put in your question that, the most, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. It isn't quite how that's not the reality that we're seeing.
Seems to be a reality shared by some of your colleagues, but okay, I appreciate that. In that case, I have no further supplementaries, but could I request, if possible, you've said 6.4%, could I have a look at that data, if that's right? Is that possible to present? Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hucker, your second question about Colston Hall. Did you have a supplementary on that?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do, but I'm not sure if the Mayor will be in a position to answer it at this stage. I'd like to know whether this arrangement means that a value will be assigned to the venue in the council's accounts. So perhaps Marvin, your officers, will get back to me on that in due course.
I'll get the detail on how it will be recorded here as well. Thank you. But I'm sure if you, I don't know who's had a chance to go over to the venue at the moment. I'm not going to ask a show of hands. That might be painful. But I will say I was there with Lord, whose name escapes me. Mendoza. Lord Mendoza, who was we took him over to see Colston statue and talked about the plans for that because he's dealing with it. I think he's the head of one of Oxford's colleges, and they've been dealing with a statue issue there. So he was looking at how we dealt with Colston. But on his way over to Bristol Beacon, and he didn't have an invite, but we took him anyway, so he joined in the event. He was just effusive about how incredible it is for a city like Bristol to have what he considers a world-class music venue here. So I'm not saying it hasn't been a painful journey, but what I am saying is that around the country and actually around the world, people are talking about Bristol's world-class music venue, and certainly the aim is to make sure that really pays off for our city, not just as a site of aspiration and kind of high culture, as it were, but one that genuinely offers opportunity to young people and communities right across Bristol.
Councillor Smith. Now, lane rental schemes.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Marvin. These are encouraging responses. The obvious follow-up to question 1 is, could I have a copy, please, of the Council's response to that consultation?
Yeah, I'm sure that's fine.
Brilliant, thank you. And on question 2 on the percentages, it seems there is a bit of play here and a bit of leeway. I note that there's a feasibility study being commissioned. You probably don't have the answer to this right now, but I'd be interested to know what assumptions are built into that feasibility study about how much of the network could be subject to lane rental. And in fact, a copy of the terms of reference of that and who's doing it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure we can do that. But I'm going to go back to the, following up from Councillor Rippington's question here. If we're concerned about roadworks, then please cast your mind forward to a segregated overground mass transit system and the level of roadworks that would accompany that in some of the densest parts of the area, in the city, including in our main arterial roads. It's a level of intervention that just doesn't bear thinking about. So I hope you'll lend your concerns as you think about what options are in front of us and what are clearly not deliverable and would not be acceptable to Bristol.
Okay, it looks as though Councillor Michelat and Councillor Gollop and Councillor Morris are not here, so we can go. That concludes the member forum questions, and I'll now take. No. Okay, I'll now take member statements in order of receipt. I remind members that a maximum of 1 minute will be allowed for the presentation of each statement. There'll be no debate on the statements and they will be referred to the Mayor for consideration. So, Councillor Hopkins, you have the first one.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The answer to my colleague's question about whether we could expect strategic sill to be spent in Redcatch Park was a little vague, and this statement actually follows up on that. We are particularly, it's the case that a huge amount of money will be generated in sill from this development, and our park is right next door and will have extra pressures upon it. We therefore think it's absolutely essential that some strategic sill is designated for Redcatch Park. What concerns us is that because parks in Knoll have a much higher satisfaction rate than across the city, so 90.2% as opposed to the city average of 71.6%, and better usage 73.1% compared to 56%, that it will be regarded that the parks are in good enough condition anyway. We have to point out that that satisfaction rate is being gained because of local effort and local control, local investment, and not by investment from the City Council. And the last time we actually got any was prior to the first mayor. We have a list of things that need to be done, and we hope, as the petition, which you'll get later on, says, that there will be proper consultation with local councillors. We've been protecting our park for the last 20 years, and before any money is spent, we want to make certain that we are properly consulted, as the people in signing the petition have agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor McAllister, Western Harbour Advisory Group. 1 minute, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Western Harbour Advisory Group is currently being refreshed. This group will provide really essential oversight for one of the largest and most significant regeneration projects this city has seen in decades. It's essential that we do it right. And it has therefore been quite disappointing to see that the Mayor's Office has decided not to permit local councillors to take places on this group, which is contrary not only to the expressed sentiments of councillors, but also the overwhelming feeling of local residents who want to be able to see their representatives having influence on this project. I ask that the administration reconsider this stance to exclude local representatives. After several years of uncertainty, which has caused doubts and frustrations among residents, it would be really good to show there is now a commitment to reassure residents that the council does want to do this well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Councillor Fodor, your statement on missed recycling services.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lord Mayor. Just a reminder, our weekly recycling collections serve every home in the city every week. And I do think it is the Mayor's responsibility to prioritise the delivery of such basic core services to city residents. But with whole streets sometimes being missed, week after week, several weeks running in my ward, like Melbourne Road, if we aren't keeping streets open to allow essential vehicles through, then it means the council is, through the client and through neglect, isn't allowing our contractor to do their actual job, which is to collect the materials properly and on time. So it's 2 years since I was in this forum, and I was promised there should be better data to notice where these missed streets are week after week. But the chaotic parking hasn't been addressed. The corner protection that was suggested hasn't been delivered. I've worked with residents, the police, the contractor, and our area has no money. I don't think it's our area, our community's obligation to provide access for our own basic services. So please prioritise these. They're needed by our residents, and they reflect on the council and impede the contractor doing their job. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Fitzjohn.
My statement refers to public rights of way and the fact that it has never received an SRA. Public rights of way and greens does really important work in not only in Bristol, but is also linked to groups across the neighbouring counties that are linked through the West of England Consortium. It's also can be a barrier to development, because if you have a public right-of-way going across your land and you want to build 200 blocks of flats, you're going to have a problem. So it's a very important, it's important work. We also manage things like Stoke Lodge, greens, village greens, and this can take serious work involving our legal department and also King's Council, who were brought in for the Stoke Lodge last May.
Thank you, Tessa. If you could just wrap up. Thank you.
I'm making a case for it to receive an SRA. Thank you.
Thank you. And rather surprisingly, that concludes both the statements and the meeting. Thank you very much.